What up, pilots? So I've been talking about manual engine control and trimming in certain piston engine aircraft. So I'm gonna go over a generalized video on why you use certain settings for certain aircraft. So with radiators, we'll start with radiators first. With radiators, there's two different types of piston engine aircraft. There's radial engine aircraft and there's inline engine aircraft. Or radials are also air-cooled, and then inline engines are liquid-cooled. So the differences in the radiators there is with air-cooled or radial engines, you want to keep since it's air-cooled, you don't have to have the radiators open as much, basically, because it's cooled by the air flowing through the engine. So with radial engines, a good percentage to start out with is 20%. With inline engines, a good starter percentage is about 40%. Each engine does have an operating temperature, depending on the engine that you have. So if you're in a radial, go 20. If you're in an inline engine, go 40. If it's still overheating, just go a little higher. Just pay attention to your operating temperature at the top left here. If you're on a colder map, you can get away with turning it down. If you're on a hotter map, you're going to have to want to turn it up a little bit. So just pay attention to your temperature. Also with radiators, there is what's called the Meredith effect. Basically, cold air comes into the radiator, the intake, goes into the engine bay, the air turns hot, and then the hot air gets shot out the rear side of the radiator, which is called the Meredith effect. There is a few aircraft that have this in game. It's mostly the P-51, so anything Mustang series. Yaks, Lag 3, G55, C202, C205, and the Key 61, I believe, also have the Meredith effect, but nowhere near as much as the P-51. P-51s were literally built to be fast, so that's why they have the Meredith. They were literally meant to have the Meredith effect. That's why they're so fast. So yeah, just pay attention to your temperature and just gauge it from there on what you need to do. Just remember, radial engine, air-cooled engines, starting at 20. Inline engine or liquid-cooled engine start at 40. Unless you're in a P-51, go 70. Yaks go about 60. Also, the more you open your radiators up, the more drag you gain too. So you kind of want to gauge how much power you're getting and how much drag you're getting by how much your radiators open. So pay attention to how much speed you're gaining as well when you're messing with your radiators. Next, we have propeller pitch. So with propeller pitch, a good starter percentage for propeller pitch is going to be about 90%. Some aircraft like to run a little bit higher than 90%, and some aircraft like to run a little bit lower than 90%. So Spitfires, for example, like to run a little bit higher than 90%. And so with propeller pitch, 100%, so I'm at 90 right now, let me turn it to 100. 100% is fine pitch, which means that the blades turn away from my course of flight, my flight path basically. So when I turn it to 0, it turns course, and it basically turns the edges of the blades directly straight 0%, where there's no angle at all. Which means my propellers are not biting the air at all. So if you're damaged and your engine is cooking because you took a shot and you ended up winning the engagement and you're trying to head back home, and you do not have prop feathering, then you want to set your propeller pitch to 0, and that your propellers are not biting the air, which means you're not causing any drag on your propellers, and you can just glide back home. If you do have prop feathering, though, you can just toggle prop feathering. I'm in a P-47, so it doesn't have prop feathering, so I don't have it. So let me turn up my propeller pitch back up here. Also, propeller pitch does have to do with your temperatures as well, so pay attention to your propeller pitch. If you're overheating, just kind of just kind of mess the propeller pitch a little bit and see how much power you're gaining by, or how much temperature you're gaining as well, to kind of gauge what propeller pitch you want to use. But 90% is a really good starter percentage. So next we have mixture. With the way mixture is modeled in game, it's about the power that you're gaining in your aircraft, which is actually incorrect. I don't know why Gaijin has it modeled by power, because it's actually not modeled by power. But if you're in anything other than a Soviet aircraft, you'll want to run your percentage at about 85%. Basically, the higher you go, a little bit lower that you want to go. So if you're on the airfield, set it to 85. When you start climbing to 10, 15, 20,000 feet, just drop it a percentage or two. Alright, you know, you don't have to do it, you don't have to go to 50% because you'll lose power. You're not going to get any lower than, I want to say, 75% mixture. So, yeah, if you're in a Soviet aircraft, run 80 when you take off. If you're in anything else other than a Soviet aircraft, run 85. If you're climbing super high, go 75%, 80% to gain a little bit more power. With mixture though, mixture should be modeled by fuel consumption, not by power. And I don't know why Gaijin has it set that way, but whatever. Next is magnetos. So the magnetos, you always want to set it to 1 plus 2. You're never going to run it at 2 or 1 or 0, because I set it to 0 and my engine just turned off completely. Even though I'm at 100%, my magneto is at 0 and I have no power. My engine just shut off. You can hear my blades just whirling in the wind. So let me set my magnetos back to 1 plus 2. My engine comes back. There we go. So magnetos is basically the plugs in your engine. That's simply what magnetos is. Next is turbochargers and superchargers. If you want to hear about turbos, go to my P47 video, because the turbocharger is only in the P47. So superchargers. P47s only have one gear. So with superchargers, you want to run supercharger gear. You want to run supercharger gears every at about 8,000 feet or 2,500 meters, give or take. Each engine is different. So just kind of gauge if you start to lose power and you have more than supercharger gear. If you have more than one supercharger gear, turn your supercharger gear up if you're up at higher altitude to get your power back. So it's every gear is going to be in 8,000 feet increments, 8 to 9,000 foot increments in altitude, or about 2,500 increments, 2,500 meter increments. So give or take. Each engine is different though, so you got to kind of gauge it yourself. But that's roughly about where it is. So hopefully that helped you guys a little bit, and I'll continue doing some more manual engine control and trimming videos. So see you guys later.